Welcome to the podcast, Coach.
Thank you very much for having me.
No, man, so honored to have you on. I know we've been in contact here for the last couple of years, and just really been watching you step by step, and then also the film that you send, man, it's unbelievable, and just really helps me to add tools to my toolbox. Just when I think I know enough, you send some film of some really cool international type film, and then I realize, okay, I can learn more. I can learn more, and those concepts I just hadn't seen in one way or another really opened up my eyes, and so I appreciate you for that. And now, seeing you have the success you're having at Alabama, just finishing up in the Final Four and all that, just been really cool. So here again, man, I appreciate your time and you coming on with us.
Yeah, no problem. Glad to be here.
So my first question, Coach, is how were you introduced to the game of basketball?
It really started at a younger age. My stepfather, I would say, is the one that at the time had introduced me. He's actually passed away now. My mom and him ended up getting divorced, but my father played a lot of sports. Was very talented. Played some form of professional baseball, uh, pool, bowling. Actually, New York State champion yo-yoer, ping pong. My dad played pretty much every sport except basketball, and because he was talented at great hand-eye coordination, when he was trying to teach me, his way of teaching was yelling because I was
Yeah.
not anywhere near as talented. So I kind of picked up one sport he didn't play. My stepfather had played basketball and kind of introduced me to the game, and just kind of took it on.
Good deal, man. Now, that being the case, like we look at our parents, right? In your case, your stepfather, and the influence they had on us, kind of the beginning, the genesis of the game for you. Uh, Always super important, for those of us who've made basketball somewhat a huge part of our lives, not our whole lives, but something that can definitely maintain this kind of North Star for us, whether it's vocationally or even personally. And just going back, that's why I asked that question, because I always go back to the beginning of how I got into the game, what I loved about it, what memories are associated with that, and it's always good to have that associated with those that were kind of leading us and guiding us through our youth and our childhood. So it's really cool stuff. Now, Coach, what was your experience as a player in that? Not necessarily how good of a player you were, but how did you view coaches growing up uh, in your here again in your formative years that were really kind of somewhat of a model for you or kind of a deterrent for you?
I kind of had both. I had a coach. He was kind of a JV coach named Kevin Hendrick, who really cared about his players, really cared about coaching, tried to invest a lot, which was a positive role model. And then there were some other coaches that just always super negative. Um, and then as my two best friends' father, his name was Larry Bache, had coached us in AAU, and then I ended up transferring to play for him in high school. He was a successful businessman that coached at a private school that my two best friends went to, and for him it was playing for great. He was constantly thinking of out of the box stuff on how to win, and also had a clear directive to make sure the ball got to the two best players on the floor. And it was very clear on what our roles were to win, and we had a pretty successful year. And so I had the opportunity to kind of play for a few different coaches that were inspiring and positive, and others that were negative and kind of took the love out of the game.
Wow. You know, I had a conversation with Jay Billis about that, and he's got a really cool story about, well, cool at this point, but at the time, how a coach kind of, there's his high school coach kind of tore him up. And that affects you moving forward. But to seem like you had this balance of some good coaching, some bad coaching, how did that affect you kind of moving forward into coaching? Like, who or what convinced you to go into coaching?
I finished playing. I had some small college opportunities with my two best friends. Their father, who was our high school coach, was like a father to me. He was a successful businessman, offered all of us a job. after playing, and I was offered me a job making more money than what my mom had made in her life. I think it was like $35,000. So two of us took it. The third one, they were twin brothers, he went to go play in college, and so I started working for him and became his assistant. And I was fortunate because he was very busy with his business, and I got to do a lot of the coaching at 18. I was taking the
Wow.
team to team camps and running workouts and practices, and had a lot of passion for it. Back then, this would have been 2003. Player development wasn't a huge thing, but I had a passion for player development because nobody had really spent a lot of time in the gym with me,
Yeah.
working on my game. And what I figured out as a player is, I had multiple times where I'd have a great half, and then I'd get yelled at extensively at halftime for missing a box out or something else. And I would kind of go into a shell. You'd say I was mentally weak, but I would not perform at the same level of what I did in the first half. And my experience as a player shaped me. And then what's interesting is I started my high school career coaching that way, which was good because I helped build up a high school program named Old Small Christian. I became the head coach at 20.
Wow.
Uh, we had from 2025, we had just under 30 players, I think, go Division 1. But some of the early guys that were going Division 1, what's interesting is I coached them that way. We're constantly trying to be positive, not trying to beat them down. But then on the flip side, when they would get to college, they would play for college coaches that were the exact opposite. It's like
Mm.
just super negative, beat them down, and they weren't prepared for that. And so then I had to think mentally, am I failing them by not preparing them for this type of coaching? Because that's not the way that I coach.
Yeah.
And, um, so I was fortunate, from between 18 and 25, I was coaching high school, and I coached about 1,000 games between, we played every type of league, spring, summer, fall, and then we played like close to 40 games in the high school season. But I mean, I went to every team camp I could, every league I could, every fall league. I mean, we played, it was like almost 250 games a year, which,
Wow.
back now, knowing what you know about sports science, which is crazy,
Mhm.
arguably part of the problem with youth sports today. But then you didn't know that, it was just about,
Yeah.
I always wanted to get guys opportunities. And so I would take my high school players that weren't on really good AAU teams, that weren't good enough to play on good AAU teams, and I would take them, and we'd have 7 guys in the tournament and coach them up. And
Yeah.
it was a huge part of my coaching development.
Yeah, no, that sounds a lot. That's more grassroots than anything else right there, what you're talking about. Kind of taking, like you said, those kids that were not so desirable to everybody else and getting them to a place that they felt like they could be those kids that were getting those opportunities. It's really cool stuff like that. That love for player development is kind of there already, at that young age that you were at. Now, as a coach, going from a player to a coach, that is, uh, what was like your welcome to coaching moment? Because we've all had it where we stepped into coaching and it was like, man, okay, this is real. I'm not a player anymore. Uh, or just a memorable moment in your first experience as a coach.
The welcome to coaching moment, I'm not sure, man. It was so long ago. Yeah, I was 18 years old when I started.
Yeah.
Uh, I do remember at a young age, as I started to have some success, and you think you know what you're talking about, you think you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And we went to a team camp, and we just played against a team that we were far superior talented.
Yeah.
And you think you know what you're doing, and this guy just carved us up. I mean,
Yeah.
he tore us apart in every way possible, and was a fantastic high school coach. A guy by the name of Roger Duncan was coaching at Sefner Christian. I'll never forget it. And I just walked out of there. I was like, "Yep, I'm not that good." And
Yeah.
that was a moment I certainly remember, for sure. But then some of the like moments that really change and inspire what you're doing is just first time. My very first kid that got his very first Division 1 offer. No one had really ever had a Division 1 opportunity coming from my school. And I remember the excitement. University of Maryland, Eastern Shores, first offer,
Wow,
and just how excited I was for that young man.
that's fantastic, coach. Yeah, no, I remember the kind of having the same similar feeling in that, you always kind of envision it like one day I'm going to have a that we what we call it, right? We sent the kid there, but the reality was is it took a village to get to that point. But you kind of have that idea in your head, like, yeah, I've sent that kid, I sent that kid, and that first one that gets the opportunity, I'll never forget the first coach that walked into the gym. I mean, things of that nature that really kind of make a monumental moment in our lives, only because it made you hungrier to help other kids to get to that point because you saw the joy and the difference it made into the family's life as well. So really cool stuff, man. And so, like your career, coach, like you're talking about Olmar Christian to University of Alabama now. Uh, what in your career, whether it was the NBA, G League, anything you've done with international overseas, what in your career prepared you for an opportunity like the Final Four that you just experienced?
I mean, I think all of it. It's like you're going to come across so many different situations when you're on that run, when you're going through. We had lost in the SEC tournament to Florida. They'd beat us twice in basically
Yeah,
the last week. And then we hadn't played well the last 6 games of the season. We were on an amazing roll. Then Latrell Wrightsell gotten hurt, and we were playing fantastic, and we kind of lost the mojo. It's like
yeah,
something was broke, and we lose in the SEC tournament in the first round of Florida, and we're going into the NCAA tournament, and we're primed to go on this improbable run. And I think it's I'm fortunate. I've had a collection of experiences at different levels in different countries in different cultures and for different really good head coaches. And so I've been able to see how really good coaches in different parts of the world handle different situations. And so being able to reflect on that during some of the issues that you have throughout the course of the season is important, and advice that you can try to offer to young men, to players, to your head coach, to your coaching staff. Um, but it's the reality, man. Nate Oates is a beast. The guy's just,
yeah.
it's not it's not like magic that he's just successful every year. The guy's just, he's incredible.
Yeah, no, definitely somebody that you look at and you say, man, high character guy, even though kind of all the stuff that went on last year and seemed to have been under a microscope and really just came through with flying colors because of his character and who he is as a person. So, kind of going through all those situations when you talk about the head coaches that you worked with and for, uh, to prepare you for things like that is super important. I think that's, people who are watching and listening can really learn from every level and every coach they work with or work for, and never forsake that time spent and that time invested, I should say, really, because you just never know what you'll be looking at, whether it's a Final Four, an NBA title, a G League title, whatever level you're at, high school, middle school, even. You can take all those experiences and they'll lead to something great one day, even in your own personal life. So it's good stuff, man. Now, leadership, because we talk about Nate Oates, and I think of leadership when I think of that guy. And what leadership concepts throughout your career have translated from either program to program that you've been a part of?
Yeah, I mean, I think the easy answer is just caring about people.
Okay.
Right? Like the reality is, people talk about leadership. You can't. It's very difficult to lead without love.
Yeah.
And if you're not loving your players, if you're not loving people, if you're not getting them to believe that you're there about them, your leadership is going to fall on deaf ears. And
Yeah.
you know, I think laying the foundation of your culture with good people is really important. The buzzword in college is we're going to build culture. Every head coach that gets a head coaching job says the same thing. We're going to build culture. We're going to play fast, and they actually don't really play fast. And it's great. Like, you're going to build culture. How? What does that mean? How do you do it? What's the foundation of your culture?
Yeah.
And the answer is people. It's like
Yeah.
you can be the best culture builder, you can be the best leader in the world, but if you don't have good people that you're trying to build culture with or that you're trying to lead, you're going to fail.
Yeah.
It's like being the best coach in the world, but with bad players. You're not going to win. I mean, that's the reality. And your culture is just not going to be great. It doesn't matter how great you are at building it without good people. And I've been fortunate. I've lived in multiple countries. I've lived on different continents. And one thing is true across the world. Like, you are able to establish culture and lead with good people. And it doesn't matter if they don't speak English. It's like, are they good people? And
Yeah.
if you do that, you can really build something.
Yeah. No, you talk about love and good people, good players, and all that. That all translates from level to level. Just really cool stuff, man. Because I think a lot of you talk about culture being that buzzword. You're going to build a culture one way or the other, whether you're doing it or not. Because culture, like you said, is about people. Anytime you involve people in a situation to go forward in some journey, something's going to happen, good or bad or indifferent. And so, yeah, people are the reason why we do what we do. Players, their families, our support staff, other peers in the game. And so, yeah, really important, that culture buzzword. It sounds great, but you'd have to be really thoughtful and mindful and have an agenda. Not necessarily. It's sometimes you hear agenda and it has this negative connotation, but like I know, coach, when you go into meetings, you got to have an agenda for that meeting. So you got to have an agenda for what your culture is going to look like and how you're going to do it. And so, yeah, man, great stuff right there, coach. Now, coaches, right, being prepared for change and adapting. That's always something that's, especially this time of year when guys are making moves and for better or for worse, right? How can coaches better prepare themselves for change or to how to adapt uh, when it's at their front door, because change comes and it's constant. How have you done that, coach, and how would you help other coaches to adapt
Being
to
open.
change?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's like I've had to move to different countries. I've had to be able to fit in different cultures, and I've had to fit in on different coaching staffs where I'm the only American, the only foreigner on the staff. I've had to do it multiple times. I've had to do it in multiple countries, and being open, being humble,
Yeah.
trying to learn and trying to help and trying to serve. I think is really important when it comes to dealing with change, because if you're taking a new job, new state, new school, new coaching staff, maybe you know people, maybe you don't. It's like figuring out how you can impact that new environment while trying to learn about it and trying to have an open mindset. And I think some of the biggest mistakes we all make as coaches and as human beings is we're under the impression that because we think it, that it's true. You know, and very few coaches approach things with an open mindset. It's one of the things that makes Nate Oates elite. It's like people hear his interviews, they see his clinics, they see the way that he talks, and they see a very confident man that is convicted. And he is. He's extremely confident. He is convicted. He works unbelievably hard. He studies the game at a high rate, but yet best idea wins. And it doesn't matter who has the idea. He's extremely open and he's open to change. And I think for coaches that are going through that, you have to have confidence. You have to have confidence in your ability that you can change, that you can adapt. You have to be open. You have to welcome. You have to be humble enough to think about it and figure out how to embrace it and how to implement it. And also while understanding that change is hard and it's hard for everyone. I've had a lot of change in my career from levels to countries to cultures to style of play to head coaches. And I think having the open mindset to adapt and learn and listen and figure out how to impact and then how to best serve. It's like something I always try to keep a mindset of when I go to work for a new head coach or I'm in a new country or a new situation or it's a new style of play. How do I best serve Nate Oates in the way that he needs to be served, not
Yeah.
in the way that I want to serve and not in the way that I think he needs to be served?
Wow.
And I think that's super important when you're embracing change.
Yeah.
And it's you have to have that open mindset.
Yeah. Because, man, I love what you just said right there, coach, because you want to serve them not the way you want to or you feel like's best, but the way that they need you to. And that's a really honoring somebody. That's honoring people that you're working with, co-laboring, if you will. And I think that's really key. I mean, I had a situation that came up recently like that, and I had to ask somebody to forgive me because I did something the way I thought was best for the situation instead of doing what they asked me to do. And I was like, okay, okay, I get it. I saw the lack of consideration for what I was asked to do instead of, just taking it upon myself like, well, this is my best practice, but that's not what was asked of me, or that's not what was told of me. It's a really cool concept because coaches need to hear that, especially if you're a support staff. And then if you're the head coach, if you're the CEO of the team like Coach Oates, be open minded. Really good stuff. That goes a long way. Respect is given by that. And that's something that's felt. It's not just something that is words, like you feel that. So that's great stuff, man. Really, really good. Now, mentorship, coach. How important has mentorship been in your career? Because we all need somebody to kind of pull from before we can go out and mentor others. We have to have been mentored ourselves. How important has that been for you, coach?
And it's been huge. I'd say the first real big coaching mentor I had was David Thorpe. At a young age, I had David Thorpe, Kevin Sutton, and Stan Jones, who's at Florida State,
Yeah.
trying to build a program. I started working for David Thorpe. He's kind of one of the first guys to really train NBA players full time, and he's probably one of the first people to ever start a player development business. He actually started what is the modern day player development business back in the 80s. Um, and was training NBA players full time, was working with guys for the draft within my area. And I was trying to also build a high school program. And I was extremely impressed with Kevin Sutton's high school program at Montverde. He uh, he scheduled us, and it's just the way that their team operated. Like my goal was to have my high school program be like Montverde's. Uh,
Yeah.
and then Stan Jones was an assistant coach at Florida State. What's interesting is all three of them are five-star guys, and all three of them are friends. And I kind of developed a relationship with the three of them separately without them doing it together. And so Stan Jones was, I think as a young coach, and a lot of young coaches experience this, they reach out to a lot of people, and most people don't respond. Most people don't give them the time of day.
Yeah.
Um, and I think what you're talking about, like people need mentors. And I think as people progress in their career, they forget at one point they needed help
Yeah.
and they're not as willing to help other people.
Yeah.
And I remember what that felt like. I remember what it felt like for the people that wouldn't respond to me, would blow me off, would walk right past me, wouldn't shake my hand, wouldn't spend time trying to help guide me in the right direction. I remember the people that did. And I remember calling Stan Jones, and I didn't have any good players at the time for him. And turn my phone call, spend time with me, be faxing me plays and drills. And, so those three people, especially at a young coach, had a huge impact on my life and had a huge impact on my coaching career. And I never forgot how it felt. It's like I think about this whole time, and I try to explain to young coaches and people in general, people will never remember what you said, but they'll remember how you made them feel. I don't
Exactly.
exactly what Sutton and Thorpe and Coach Jones said, but I remember how it made me feel, and they
Yeah.
made me feel like I was a human being. Uh, and I think mentorship is key. I'm still very close to those three guys. I speak to Kevin Sutton every other day, probably, and David Thorpe every day, and Stan Jones not as much as I'd like, but man, that guy's one of the smartest basketball people you'll ever come across. I mean,
Yeah.
he's amazing.
Yeah. Shout out to Kevin. Kevin is my mentor and one of my mentors. And a matter of fact, I was talking to him today and mentioned that I was going to have you on. And he was like, hey, man, don't forget to drop my name. And so it got dropped without me having to pull it out of you. You got it. So, and then Stan Jones, I've had him on the show too. And Stan has been a great resource and just a really solid guy, like matter of fact kind of guy. And you appreciate those things. And so to have those three mentors in your life and those three examples in your life are really huge. And I think every coach on the call, listening or watching, if you don't have a mentor or somebody to guide you, you need to seek it out. And yeah, you might hear a lot of maybe next time, sometime later, but there's going to be somebody that'll eventually say yes. And you really kind of not latch on to them per se, but to their knowledge and their wisdom. 'Cause that's really important. Now, coach yourself in the game and your career, because I don't think we take enough time as coaches to see what we're learning about ourselves throughout the game and throughout our careers. What have you learned about yourself throughout your career?
I'm a moron. Uh,
Full disclosure, huh?
no, I mean, it's like I try to spend so much time studying the game, um, and I put a lot of emphasis on just constantly trying to learn and evolve. And honestly, it goes back to the mentorship thing that you're talking about. Like, you know, those people, Kevin Sutton, Stan Jones, David Thorpe, were so smart and were so intelligent, and the way that they saw the game was so different that I always strive to learn more. And so
Yeah.
at the end of each season, when I look back to like a year ago, I'm like, man, I was stupid. That's like the amount of information. I'm like, man, I really didn't know anything a year ago. So like I've learned over the course of the career, right? It's like, what you think it's at 23. And
Yeah.
I'm fortunate, man. Like Stan Jones and Kevin Sutton and David Thorpe would always tell me the truth. Like
Yeah.
I thought I knew some about basketball, and they would pipe me down and correct me and help humble me, uh, and that's always stuck with me. It's like
Yeah.
if you finish a year and you don't feel like you've learned a lot and that you've grown and you're not significantly a better coach, I think you've wasted a year of development.
Wow.
And I think a lot of coaches do that. I think a lot of coaches from the start of one season to the end, they're not really that much better. And it's like a player. If
Yeah.
a player finishes the season and he hasn't made dramatic improvements in his game, he's wasted a whole year. And I think there's a lot of coaches that waste an entire year. And what I've learned about myself is, I try to crave knowledge and learn as much as I can, which also humbles me because I can look back a year ago and it's like some things I think we can tweak next year at Alabama to be even better.
Wow.
Why didn't I, why didn't I know that last year? That a year ago.
Right. Well, it's kind of like that the wedding singer when Adam Sandler goes, that information would have been helpful yesterday, kind of one of those deals where it's like, man, like I think about my early on in my coaching career, I'm like, man, if I knew half of what know now back then, man, I can't even imagine how much better the people I was working with, their experience would have been. I really think about others. Like others paid the price for my ignorance or my lack of knowledge and
My high
wisdom.
school players paid the price for sure, especially with a lot of running, and,
Yeah. Oh man.
I'm
Yeah.
fortunate. It was cool. I had some of my high school players came to the Final Four. Some of my high school players come out to see me. I've had, yeah, multiple players come. I was in the NBA, and one of them is now actually a cop, and I was telling a story the other day to Casey Alexander because Casey coached him at Stetson, and we're warming up before a game, and I got somebody yelling at me in the stands, and it's a cop. And I'm like, what the? And it turns out he's a former player, and he took on security for the game so he could see me, but get paid while seeing me. Very smart.
There you go.
Uh, it's like you just look back when I was a high school coach at 20, 25, I knew nothing, and
Yeah.
um, I think my high school players, once again, they may not remember what I said, but they'll remember how I made them feel. I think my high
For
school
sure.
players feel that I loved them and that I
Yeah.
cared and that I invested a lot of time um, in them and in their development and in their success. But I was a coach. I, knew nothing.
Yeah. No, I can understand that completely. Went through the same situation as a young coach and have had those experiences like we all have, where players come back into our lives somehow, some way, and then we find out what kind of impact we had. And hopefully it was good. And we'll
Yeah.
know that whether when they try to reach out, then we'll know that for sure. If they stay away or we see them at the grocery store and they're like, look the other way or go hiding behind a bag of chips, then, then we'll know too. It's our feedback. Now, mental health coach, I still think it's not completely been fully studied as far as, post COVID, things of that nature, kind of the unrest that we saw back in 2020. And then even politically, different movements and all that happening, even right now, sometimes the chaos in life itself. How important is your mental health, the team's mental health, and the mental health of the staff as you see it?
Well, I mean, one, I think it's double, there's two answers to that question. To me, I'm very fortunate.
Mm.
I'm essentially a functioning psychopath, and that I don't ever need the mental release. I don't need to do something else. I don't really need vacation. I don't need time off. I don't. I can just keep going and going and going. It's like the downtime for me. It's like when we're on the plane and Coach Oates is like, what are you doing? What are you looking at? It's like most of the time it's like European basketball because it brings me happiness, or I'm just studying something else. I may not be watching our team because maybe I'm a little bit, tired of uh, working that aspect of my brain. And so I go to a different part and just study something else basketball wise. So one, I'm very fortunate in that I don't I don't need the mental release. I don't need the mental break. I don't need the refresher, the time off. And when I was younger, I thought that made me better.
Yeah.
I could outwork people,
Yeah.
and I could invest more into it. And now, as you're older and hopefully growing up, doesn't make you better. You're just different. And the reality is, now as a father of three,
Mm.
uh, married, it's like all I can constantly think about is I hope my kids grow up and I pray that they grow up to be happy people. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate that I'm a happy person.
Yeah.
Uh, I'm living the dream. I'm coaching basketball. I get paid to do it. I'm married to an amazing wife, beautiful wife. I have three kids. They're all healthy. I'm healthy, and I'm happy. I'm happy every day.
Yeah.
And I pray my kids grow up to be happy. And so I
Yeah.
say all that to say, I think mental health is very important. I think for what people need to do to be able to find and feel happiness in life is extremely important,
Yeah.
and it's important to their mental health. And nowadays, especially with players, man, social media is a bear.
For
And
sure.
you know, I don't really care what people think of me. I never have. You know, there's probably some arrogance to that. You know, I care what my wife thinks of me. I care what my kids think of me. I
Yeah.
care what friends think of me as a person. I don't really care what people think of me as a coach. Um, but for these young men that are players that are targets on social media, mental health is real, man. You know, it's
Yeah.
like these guys are under a microscope. They're getting crushed.
Yeah.
Even when they play great, you know, especially now with the sports betting in college, like people are attacking them on the other side of it. And at any point, at any time of day, just somebody can attack them. And you have to put that in your mindset and your thought and your approach as a coach, right? So it's like, kind of day is this guy having? Why?
Yeah.
What's the reason behind? Is he having a bad day of practice? Is he having a bad attitude? Why is he having a bad attitude? What's going on in his life? You know, and let's be honest, it's far more important. You know, I coach basketball at the University of Alabama, and I'm very fortunate, and I have an amazing job. In the realm of the world, it's not that important. And the impact, positive impact that you're having on people, it's not that important. And
Yeah.
basketball is a game, and it's a game that brings happiness to multiple people, but it's also a game that's supposed to bring happiness to our players, to our staff, to our coaches. And if it's not, you know, I think there's something wrong with that. You know, we
Yeah.
have luxury to do what we love and to love what we do. And if
Mm.
that's bringing us happiness, if our happiness is being taken away from us for some sort of mental health, you know, it's extremely important. And it's something that I think young people need. I mean, we've seen all the studies with social media and the addiction of social media, and then the
Yeah.
depression that comes with social media. I mean, man, these guys are, you know, they have one bad game, they're getting assassinated,
Yeah.
and they're human beings.
Yeah.
And then you have to think, it's like, what are these people thinking when they say that to another human being? You know, it's like, and I can say this, man, like living all over the world, you know, it's like hatred is real. You know what I mean? It's
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
that, and it's everywhere, right? It's not limited to the United States, right?
Yeah.
It is a pandemic. Hatred is a pandemic.
For sure.
And, you know, David Thorpe has a consistent saying, like, it's not hard to be a decent person. It's not
Yeah.
hard to be nice to people. It's not hard to treat them well. It's not hard to be thoughtful. And I think what people have to go through in today's age is it's very sad. And mental health is extremely important. It's something everyone should invest in. And it's something every coach should think about. What is the mental state of their players? How do they coach them? How do they help them? How do they love them? How do they
Yeah.
invest in them? How do they build them up? How do they give them inspiration?
Yeah. Good stuff, coach. I mean, it's like having the pulse of your team, more than anything. Because I mean, you want to have that pulse. You want to know what's going on, and the only way that happens is engagement. Getting to know your players, uh, as if they're that family and that culture that you say you want. Because at the presser, you talked a lot and you bumped your gums about, we're going to be a family. We're going to do this. Like you said, we're going to play fast. You laid out every single objective that you have. But the only way that's going to get done is if you consider others and hold them in that regard of them being more important than you for the program too. Because without them, do we need coaches? If we don't have players, I mean, do we? We don't have coaches. We're just a bunch of guys who know a lot about basketball. So without the players, I mean, it's kind of reciprocal, and so it's good stuff, man. Now, Coach, I want to ask you about your support system. You talked about your wife and your kids. How important is your support system, whether it's your family or the coaching staff or other stakeholders? How important has that been for you?
I mean, it's important for me. Um, my wife is everything. The reality is people I'm fortunate, man. I get to coach at the University of Alabama. Just went to a Final Four. I've been in the NBA. I've coached across the world. There's some things that have gone into that. There's a lot of things I've done in my career. People wouldn't do a lot of jobs I took that people wouldn't take in order to be here. But the reality is, like, my wife has made a lot of sacrifices for me to be here, and I wouldn't be where I'm at as a coach. I wouldn't be at the University of Alabama. I wouldn't have been in the NBA if it wasn't for the sacrifices my wife made. And my support system is extremely important because it also humanizes me and it
Yeah.
keeps me grounded. And being a father makes me a better coach,
Yeah.
because I try to be a compassionate father. I try to be thoughtful. I try to be loving. And uh, the support system that I have between them, the support system that I have between my friends, there were four people that were in my wedding that were at the Final Four to see me. And that one is in basketball, the other three aren't. And, I think your support system is really important because the honesty is this, like, you're going to have down days.
Yeah.
It's like for most people, your career trajectory isn't this. And, I mean, I was coaching high school, junior college, China, D League, Germany, Israel, Slovakia, some in South Korea, back to Israel, G League head coach in the NBA. And people look from, G League head coach and on and how great of jobs they are. But, I was owed 5 months salary in Europe at one point. Um,
Wow.
I was making $800 a month at 30 years old and married. And I've had two times in my career coaching in the D League as an assistant. My wife had to move to the junior college that I'd coached at to teach to support me because I was making $600 a month living in an apartment where I couldn't afford the heat in Erie, Pennsylvania, with a roommate who used to like
Wow.
pull up. And so there's days that are going to come that you're like, that are hard. Am I going to make it? Can I do this? And I think having that support system that's there for you is crucial to your success, as the majority of people's career isn't. It's not gonna be linear.
For sure. And I like how you said that. It's going to be crucial to your success because the other side of the coin is true. It's crucial to the times when you fail or the times where you feel like you failed, and the support system's there to kind of catch you. And like you talked about, you said, I'm healthy, my kids are healthy, my wife, y'all are all good, and you're happy. And you hope that they are, pray that they are one day. I mean, that's it for like for myself. I got four daughters, family, it's like the end of the day, the culture you build at home, more important than the culture you build with your team, but it can translate and it's made you a better coach, like you said. So that's great stuff, man. Really good stuff. And I think more coaches, when you can integrate your family culture into that team culture, and so that you can be the same person 24 hours a day, which doesn't always work for some people, but if you're genuine and you're authentic, like you said, how you make people feel, that definitely goes a long way. So, coach, I want to ask you your why. Why do you do what you do in this whole, here again, Final Four? It worked with NBA players, done player development, high school. Why do you do what you do?
Is addiction an acceptable answer? Uh,
All right.
I became addicted to it. I started
Yeah.
out working when I was 18. I was an assistant, and I was working. I was making good money. My two best friends, who I told you, one went to college to play, the other one
Yeah.
joined the workforce with me. You know, one is makes millions of dollars a year as a lawyer. The one that went to college and played, the other one sold his business for multi millions, and I'm coaching at Alabama, so who's an idiot? Um, but it's like as we were working, all I could think about was basketball every day. It
Yeah.
became an addiction, it became an obsession, it became something that I just wanted to be great at. And
Yeah.
I would say love is People talk about love the game. I mean, like I'm obsessed with the game. I'm obsessed with becoming better, chasing self improvement,
Yeah.
and um, I have an addictive personality. Uh,
Hmm.
only addicted to a few things: pizza, pancakes, basketball. But it's like I get on these
Yeah.
one track minds, and I've got a very very one track mind. And Coach Will Voigt was actually the coach of the Spurs G League team. Really, really good coach.
Yeah.
Really, kind of a
Good guy.
basketball vagabond like myself. He's been all over the world, and
Cool.
explained to me one time. It's called the hedgehog theory, and I've got a very one track mind. And then the other thing is I'm too stupid to do anything else. You know what I mean? I can barely read, write, spell. I graduated college at 26. I ain't the most educated guy, and my wife, on the other hand, has her doctorate and teaches at the university level. So
Yeah.
um, something I thought I could be
Balance.
that could outwork people, and just
Yeah.
love doing.
Yeah. We all balance each other out, I guess, at that point. Huh? And so, yeah, man, I love your vulnerability, coach. It's amazing. Those are the type of things that I think when we're self aware, man, we can really get some things done. It's when we buy into our own hype that we fool ourselves into believing that we've accomplished all that we have needed to accomplish. And I think you talk about being happy. I like to think about being content as well, not complacent, but content. And then I think that's where improvement comes in, like you're talking about, because I too have an addictive kind of behavior at times. When I help people, I try to do everything I can. When I work with kids and players, I try to do all I can. But then there's other things in my life that I've had that I'm like, why? Why am I doing this? I can't believe I'm doing this. But because you just have to channel it. So there's other people out there that may be hearing you and saying, like, man, I have that same type of addictive gene, but you just have to channel it properly and find what you love to do and kind of do it. And so, because it brings improvement, like you said, at the end of the day, to get better. And that's kind of the mantra of my podcast is to get better every day. And so that's always a good mindset. Now, my last question, coach, and it's always about legacy. And I know sometimes it's like, man, I'm not putting you out to pasture or anything, but you still got a long ways to go. But what would you want to be said of you when your career is all said and done?
Good person, help people. Uh, I try to reverse engineer it the way that I am as a coach. It's like people talk about shot spectrum. What kind of shots do you want? Free throws, layups, threes, great. How do you reverse engineer it? How do you create those shots?
Yeah,
And a while ago, I went through and I was just kind of looking up like Fortune 500 CEOs that were on their deathbed. It's like, what do these people say, right? The ultra successful that have everything you could ever want in life, the billionaires, you know, they all relatively say the same thing. I wish I was a better father. I wish I was a better husband. I wish I traveled more. And uh, whether people or not say I'm a good basketball coach when I die, it's in the realm of the world. It's not important. And it's like something we talked about earlier, man. Like people need love. The world needs love.
yeah.
People need people need inspiration. I hope when I die, people say I was a good person. I hope my kids say I was a good father and I was a good husband. Uh, if that's not the answer, then I've failed. That's the reality. I failed as a person.
Coach, I appreciate you so much for your time, man. This has been a long time coming for me. It's been an honor having you on. Here again, having connected so long ago, wanting to make, I know I've been bothering you for the last 3 years to do this, but I'm so glad to have you on, especially at this point in your career, the kind of success you've had and on the stage you've had, because I've yet to meet anybody, because I have a lot of friends in the industry and not a one of them has anything negative to say about you. And everybody holds you in high regard for obviously for your film breakdown and your offensive wizardry, terms like that being thrown out by super smart guys, smarter than me. Like I'm self-aware enough to say that. And so, yeah, man, thank you for being on. I appreciate you so much. and I'm glad we got to finally get it done.
No, thanks for having me.